Hi, my name is Dan Frey, and today I'm going to talk to you about 3 family members' reactions to when I was in crisis. And in crisis, I mean hallucinations, delusions, all of the wonderful things that make up schizophrenia. And this happened 25 years ago, so forgive me if it's not super fresh, but there are highlights that you'll just take with you for decades and decades. And so here goes. So my father, when I was starting to change my behavior, started changing, and I would get very angry, triggered very easily, and I would take it out on my father. And at first he didn't know what was going on with me. He would see me staring at walls for a long time, and maybe the conversation, he couldn't really follow what I was saying or whatever. And eventually, my father, who was a standoffish father prior to my crisis, he became all of a sudden the hero, very involved and super involved. And he escorted me himself to see a psychiatrist at the hospital, and that was my first hospitalization. But I didn't think that I thought it was a spiritual experience, and perhaps it was a spiritual experience, but it was affecting my family, my father and my mother and my sister. It's my tight family, very negatively. This change in my behavior and the way I talked and everything like that, and the trouble I would get into in the neighborhood, so. From being a standoff father to being a highly involved father was how my father handled it, because I was living with him at the time. And although after the first hospitalization I went off medication because I thought it was a spiritual experience and I wanted that back, and the medication had terrible side effects, made me a zombie, separated me from my feelings, so I couldn't connect with anyone, and that was a big problem for me. But he supported me throughout the whole thing. And second hospitalization, he found someone who was on television. Okay, his name was Ken Steele. He passed away, and he was an advocate. He also had schizophrenia, and he became my mentor. And that changed my life from that point forward. My mother, she was concerned, but I wasn't living with her because it was an abusive situation. That's why I moved in with my dad. And my mother, she was also very concerned, and she would talk to my father about it, but she was more of the person who would call the ambulance. She was the person who said, when I was on medication, she said, "You got to stay on your medication," because she was a psychiatric nurse. But I didn't live with her. I lived with my father. He became the hero. My mother just did that thing, being a psychiatric nurse. But she, there was some love there, but it was a little more separated than my father was, hands-on, and boom, he was there. My sister, she was concerned, but she always had her own life, her own social circle, and there was very limited contact with me. And when I went through crisis, later on, she wrote about it for Ken Steele's newspaper. She wrote that if he had depression, if he had bipolar, I could understand, because people feel sad, people feel depressed, people feel manic sometimes. But this psychosis, I just don't understand, and I couldn't relate to him. And that was a big problem for her. She wishes she could have understood. So my reaction to all these 3 ways of handling my crisis is that my father was awesome, although he was also a little freaked out. But he did, getting hands-on, getting very involved, and finding someone who, like Ken Steele, awesome. My mother, not so great, calling ambulances, being trigger happy with the police or whatever, not so great, but I know she loves me. And my sister, she was not present at all. That's a problem. We want our family members to be present, but she didn't really understand. And I wish I could have helped her to understand. I hope people understand, they look at their own family members and like try to compare their experience with this one, and think about what they appreciated, the response that they appreciated most, and the ones that they felt were problematic. And if it's possible to help their family members understand their experiences.